My dad carried this poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson in his wallet. It characterizes success not by how much money we make or the titles that we've earned. It characterizes success by how we lived. And I'd like to share it with you before we start this episode. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty and to find the beauty in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know that one life has breathed easier because you lived here. This is to have succeeded. I always loved this poem. And I think in this chapter of our lives, in our later years, we're starting to think a little bit more about what our legacy will be, how we will define a successful life. What has our time here been about? And what do we want the remaining time to be about? My guest today, Carole Orsborn, PhD, is a leader in the conscious aging movement and editor-in-chief of Fierce with Age, the digest of boomer wisdom, inspiration, and spirituality. She just released a brand new book titled Spiritual Aging, Weekly Reflections for Embracing Life. Everyone needs this book. Aging isn't just about getting older. In this episode, we will transform our perspective of aging by examining some opportunities and insights for spiritual growth and self-compassion. Welcome to Boomer Banter, the podcast where we have real talk about aging well. My name is Wendy Green, and I am your host. Carole Orsborn is the author of more than 35 books, including The Spirituality of Age with Robert Webber and Older, Wiser, Fiercer, as well as popular blogs on Huffington Post and BeliefNet.com. She has served on the faculties of Georgetown University, Loyola Marymount University, and Pepperdine University. And as I said, Carole just released her newest book, Spiritual Aging, Weekly Reflections for Embracing Life. She lives with her husband in Madison, Tennessee, and Toronto, Ontario. And as you listen to this episode, really take a moment to think about who would benefit from hearing this discussion. A friend, a family member, someone who needs this kind of inspiration. And then share this episode with them. They can find the video on the YouTube channel for Boomer Banter, or they can listen to the podcast wherever they get their podcasts. It will be available by tomorrow, and they will thank you for your recommendation. And I also want to take a moment to ask for your help. I work a lot of hours and spend considerable expense on putting together the Boomer Banter podcast. And I would like to know if you would be willing to add a little support to the work that we're doing, if you appreciate it, of course. So you can do a one-time support, $5 for Buy Me a Coffee, or you can join our monthly membership, the Boomer Believer membership, for $25 a month, where we have 2 meetings a month. Go to buymeacoffee.com/heyboomer0413 and help us keep this podcast going and sharing the wonderful guests like we have today. And so, with that, please join me in welcoming Carole Orsborn to Boomer Banter. Thank you, Carole, for being here.
Oh gosh, Wendy, what a bang up start with that poem. You
Isn't
hit
that?
every single point.
I know my dad was ahead of his time. I loved that he carried that poem in his wallet.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. What a legacy right there, right?
Yeah, yeah. So let's start. Um, I will be bold and I am 71. How about letting us know how old you are?
Wow. Um, I'm 76 and soon in February to turn 77. And I'm always thinking of myself as older than I am, which is because I believe in older and wiser. So, I don't have the same, I've never had the same feeling a lot of people have about being embarrassed or, feeling like they're lesser than as they age. I love being older.
So
Go
you're
figure.
you're an old soul. I
I
know
must
that's
be.
true. Yeah. So with that though, what if anything has surprised you about aging?
Well, I'll tell you for starters, I'm completely shocked that I'm publishing this book with a major publisher at 76. Um, I have retired twice. I mean, big retirements, the kind where first I left a full-time job and then I left my career as an author. About every 5 to 10 years since I've been in my late 50s, I think. Um, and this particular publisher, I mean, I guess it's a God thing because I they brought out a book of mine with Bob Weber in 2015, then won gold in the National Nautilus Book Awards. It was a big deal, but it was before its time. I mean, even just 10
Mm.
years ago was before this issue was anything anybody was talking about. And so the same publisher turned me down multiple times. Um,
Oh.
and so I decided with this book, which I gave to them a couple of years ago, I said to them and to myself, if this doesn't get picked up, I'm done with my career. It's a sign from God. I'm done. And no, they said yes. And then they put, major effort behind it. So, I'm the grandma Moses of authors, I guess.
It's exciting. It's
Yeah.
exciting. There's so much meat to this book. Oh my goodness. So we'll have
Oh,
to,
thank you.
yeah, yeah. But before we go too far into that, I mean, in the intro, I talked about conscious aging. Can you
Right.
describe what that is, please?
Okay. It's a very broad banner, really. But most of us who are listening to your show probably lived through the 60s and 70s and probably remember the consciousness movement.
Mhm.
And many of us were part of women's liberation consciousness raising groups. I know I was. It's expanding awareness of self and other, and it's telling more of the truth of reality and becoming more honest with yourself.
Mhm.
And the trick is to be confronted by embracing more of the truth of reality, but staying awake and optimistic.
Ooh, right?
That's
There's the challenge or
yeah,
the opportunity.
right, exactly. I mean, without that, you just get depressed and go under. So, conscious aging and I would say spiritual aging, which is where I've moved to, is the sort of the cutting edge of conscious aging. And that's it's daunting, to be in these times and era to stay positive and hopeful. You have to take, I think, a really deep dive beneath the surface manifestations of what's going on in this world.
Yeah. It's not easy for sure. It's not easy.
No.
So the title of this was, aging, spirituality, and self-compassion. And many people that I talk to are afraid of aging and afraid of dying. And so, in your years of study, Carole, have you transformed your perspective on aging and dying?
For myself, um, I do imagine the end of my life, and I used to dread it. And I recently met up with my sister-in-law, who's in her late 80s and not in great health, but has been consistently one of the most upbeat, optimistic people I've ever known. You know, one of those people that just inspires you. And so
Mhm.
I asked her the big question. I said, Sue, how are you feeling about the future? And you know what she said to me?
What'd she say?
She said, magical.
Magical. Wow. In her 80s and not in good health.
Right. And I thought to myself, well, why not? Like I say, you have to dig deep, but she takes delight in everything. You know, when she's needing care from somebody, she takes delight in that.
Mm.
So, you know, I think they call it a spiritual practice because you have to practice it. If you do
Mm.
nothing, just live your successful life and try and extend midlife and your busy days and your external pleasures until the very end without any preparation, and then all of a sudden you're not feeling well, you're not going to think of it as magical.
Yeah.
So, what
Oh.
level of what depth do we have to go to find the essence in ourselves that is untouched, or even, oh my gosh, more than untouched. It's like the diamond that gets ground, the rock that gets ground into a gorgeous diamond by the challenges of aging and death and dying. So I'm practicing. I don't always feel optimistic about the end. I don't like going to the doctor's office and having to hear what my numbers are or whatever.
Oh, I know.
That's the
Right.
worst.
Yeah.
But we were just talking. You and I were just talking a little bit before we started, and I said, for me, the thrill of age is that I am using it as permission to listen to my own heart and soul, which is often telling me to do things that were counter to my programming and what society expects of me. So for
Mhm.
me, aging is synonymous with freedom. And
Yes.
yeah, I can't tell
Yes.
you how many times I'll say to myself, I don't like her anymore. She used to be a good friend, but I don't need to waste my precious life. I'm 76. I get to do what I want.
Right. Right. I do agree with you on that, with the freedom side of it, because I think there are, also with like who we have to invite over for certain things, and where we have to show up, we have to. I don't think we have to anymore. I think we have to do what's right for us.
Yeah, and the spiritual practice again, and that the book is really helping people hone, is how to listen to your own heart and gut and not second guess, not not overthink, not argue with yourself, not think you're bad because you're having something that is other than what your church or your mother or
Mhm.
society thinks you ought to be doing at any
Yeah.
particular point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think getting to the aging place, accepting that I'm aging and all has not been as difficult. I don't think I'm ready to totally think about dying yet, but that's a long way off. So, um, but I wanted to talk to you about this next stage of life. And I don't, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's been a lot of study about, everything you see is 65 and older, right? I don't think there's been a lot of study about it. So, do we even have a label for what this stage of life is, and what the tasks, like would be for us as we're aging?
Great question. I got my doctorate in Vanderbilt in a second career in history and critical theory of religion, but my area of specialization was life stage and spiritual development. And I actually went to get my doctorate because I was afraid of dying and aging. And I
Mhm.
wanted to hear what the greatest scholars and sociologists and anthropologists and life stage experts had to say about it. And most of them, the Piagets and like that, your character was formed by the time you're 6 or 7, and then
Right.
you get into somebody like Kohlberg and some of the others, and you peak at midlife. And there was only one or two that even discussed what goes on in later life. It was always considered like an addendum or a decline, slow, sad decline.
Absolutely.
And, do you remember Gail Sheehy? Do you remember the
Yes,
book
for sure.
Passages?
Yes.
You might, if you have a copy on your shelf, and a lot of us do, it's really fun to pull out because she has like 20 or 30 pages on the 20s and 20 or 30 pages on the 30s and so forth and so on. And then when she gets to the 60s, it's 2 pages. And every stage has its, its title. You want to guess what she called the 60s and beyond?
Old? I don't know.
The serene 60s.
The serene.
Serene. And the thing is, she's passed now, but I knew her.
Oh,
And
you did?
I did. Yeah, we were on a lot of panels together because she and I were both life stage experts. And she was not serene. She was passionate and challenged and
Right.
conflicted, and everybody I knew was like that. I don't know any serene people. If I do, it's like I personally think serenity is boring. I do. You
Yeah.
know, I have a different role model. I love Florida Scott Maxwell, who wrote a book called The Measure of My Days about 50 years ago at the age of 85. And
Amazing.
she talked about becoming fully alive.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of authors now who are starting to begin to understand what the purpose of old age is for. It takes many, many years to get beyond the compromises that we have to make earlier in life and the masks that we don and the illusions that we hold. And I mean, didn't we less than a month ago have so many illusions crash? And I think, a lot of us are, it's
Yes.
hard enough being old in the best of times, right? But,
Right.
but try being hard at a time when you assumed your lifetime's work was going to manifest into
Yes.
something of a culmination, and instead you find yourself scattered in pieces on the floor. So those are the times we're in. And but again, I'm not hopeless. I believe the falling apart is part of the process, and that like the phoenix, that there's something that's going to come out of this for you and each of us personally as well as a society. But
Yeah.
it does take faith, definitely.
It does take faith. And that's always
Mhm.
one of the things I've tried to remember. And when I coach people, that sometimes when things are the hardest, that's because there's this new little metamorphosis going on and you're going to blossom out into something else. But you have to be ready. You have to be aware that that's happening and open to the experience.
Well, and I think a lot of older people have a tendency to isolate and not
Mm-hmm.
talk about the shadow side of aging, even with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a friend, but I know a lot of people who are still putting on the masks, putting on all their makeup and going to fancy places to eat and talking about their trips. If you have the money, the latest cruise or whatever. But I think it's interesting because you said you don't think about death or dying, but it sneaks in funny ways. And I bet you do more than, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
bet you
I
do
know.
more than you think. Like, let me give you an example. Maybe not you, but most of us, when we go to the financial planner, you're trying to figure out, how you're going to handle your money. What is the first question they ask you?
How long do you think you're going to live?
Yes. So,
I
part of
know.
it is, catching yourself when you don't know you're looking at yourself and finding out that, all the questions about legacy and immortality and your children, all that stuff has to do with our attitudes about death and dying in disguise.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
yeah, and you don't have to look at death and dying, but I have found that people that are willing to go there while they're younger and it's not imminent, as I said before, spiritual practice. You don't want to
Mhm.
take your first look at it and what your attitude is about it on your deathbed.
No, right, that's right, that's right.
So, why not now? Um,
Yeah, and you're right, we do think about it, we do all of our paperwork and try and prepare for that and,
yeah. Have you done your
yeah,
will?
I've got my will and I've got
Yeah.
all that done, and
And then we put it away and we go back into denial, which is okay.
I
I
know.
am I'm a I am a big believer in a little bit of denial goes a long way.
I know, and we do everything we can to stay as healthy as we can.
Well, that too.
Yeah. So I want to talk about your book, Spiritual Aging. And you say in the introduction, Carole, that this is a quote: however old you are, however challenging your circumstances, you can fulfill your life's purpose. Now, I've had so many conversations with people who struggle with this idea of a life purpose. So,
Mm.
what would you say is your life's purpose, and when did you feel like you really knew what it was?
Well, there's multiple answers to that question, but I'm going to go to the answer I got that offered me the biggest relief. I mean, obviously, there's the things of, wanting to use my skills and talents, writing a book, speaking, that kind of thing. Obviously, there's my relationship with my children and grandchildren, Um, but I always felt like, why do I have the sense that there's more to be done?
Mhm.
And that, uh, in a way, the older I get, the less I know. So it's like sometimes I feel like I'm going backwards. Things that I
Yeah,
thought I was accomplishing didn't turn out the way I thought.
I know.
And then I started reading Carl Jung, especially his very last book, which is called Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. And in it, he defines the purpose of life in such a way that I got it, and I completely relaxed. He said that the complete and total purpose of life is the expansion of consciousness,
Hmm.
beginning, middle, and end.
Hmm.
The ability to embrace more of reality, to grow your heart, to grow self-awareness, to grow acceptance of reality. And as an example, learning that you don't know things is expanding your consciousness. So understanding that there's parts of you that wished you could do more and that you're leaving unfinished business, that's an expansion of consciousness. So it's really about self-awareness and growing your self-awareness. And like I said, you can dip your toe in illusion, but don't live there.
Interesting. So it's not that capital P purpose of, finding the cure for cancer and solving world hunger. It seems like it's more of an internal awareness of who you are, what you've done, and maybe how you can share those gifts if you're aware of them.
Well, if you do the work of spiritual aging, and my book leads you there week by week, eventually you get deep enough that you're not even asking questions of purpose and meaning anymore. I
Mm.
mean, in those highest moments of your life, when you're sitting on the riverbank and the sun is rising, or your grandchild is in your arms, your brand new grandchild, you're not asking what the purpose of meaning of life is or
Oh,
age is.
yeah.
You're immersed in it and you're living it. And
Yeah.
I think we have this idea that it's something that we have to achieve that is ahead of us or behind us or beneath us or that we have to struggle for. And I think the person who's in their garden, just totally immersed in the flow of planting your father's poem.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
beautiful. The patch of land. I think just,
Exactly.
I would just give that poem and tell people to check any one of those off. That's your
I
purpose.
I love that, Carol. You're right. That does relieve a lot of the pressure that we put on ourselves about, "Oh, no, what's my purpose? What's my purpose?" So, yeah, that's beautiful.
But
Thank you.
I think ambition is a midlife thing. And I think,
Mm.
you need it when you're young.
Mhm.
You drive yourself through midlife. But one of the privileges of aging is to stop harrowing. You planted your field, harvest it
Harvest it.
through joy or whatever your heart is telling you to do. I know
Yeah,
so many people at this exact moment who are like, oh my God, how am I going to save the world? We're going down the tubes. And their
right.
heart is telling them, all I want to do is go and listen to classical music and cry. Well,
Mm.
I'm going to say that I think you're serving life and your purpose and making your biggest contribution by letting yourself go listen to your favorite piece of classical music and cry. If that's what you're called to do, don't argue with yourself.
Trust.
Don't
Trust.
send out 200 postcards and be miserable. Just trust. You need healing right now.
Yeah. So trust in your inner voice. Don't argue with it.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Let me pause here for just a moment to tell you about an amazing offer from Road Scholar. Road Scholar is
Nice.
one of our sponsors, and they provide trips all over the world, and they have this big thing going on right now that is a chance to win 7 amazing trips for 2 to destinations such as South Africa, Australia, a riverboat voyage through France, and much more. And so you would just go to rhodescholar.org/heyboomer, and then you can enter to win. But if you don't see the pop-up that says Great Global Giveaway, that means you're already subscribed to their newsletter, but you still have a chance. You can recommend some other friends of yours that would get the newsletter and put their names in, and then you are also entered in to win the contest. So I hope you will take the opportunity by going to rhodescholar.org/heyboomer. And I hope to see you on a Rhodes Scholar learning adventure soon.
May I just tell you that Rick Moody, who wrote the foreword to my book, was the founder of that.
A Rhodes Scholar?
Yes.
When it was Elder Hostel?
Right.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then he went to AARP, and his forward alone is worth the price of the book.
His forward is great. Yes, yes. I do. And I do love traveling with Rhodes Scholar. So we're back with Carole Orsborn, a leader in the conscious aging movement. And as boomers, we talked about this, Carole. We were a generation that thought we would change the world. We protested against the Vietnam War. We stood up for women's rights and civil rights. We hoped for peace, and we worked for candidates that we thought would bring us to a more peaceful world. But now many of us are disillusioned and tired. Yet I, for one, still want to bring hope to my community as I age. So we kind of talked around this a little bit, but do you see a role for the boomer generation as we age to continue to be involved in community action? Or is it a more individual time for reflection and inner growth?
Wow. For most of us, that's the $1 million question.
That's a tough one.
And they are completely in conflict with each other.
I know.
It's like I'm at the peak of my abilities. I know I am. Is it my obligation to stay engaged in the world when my heart is telling me that what I really want to do is take a step outside and use this time for reflection and inner growth? That's it. So the easy answer is very difficult, because I think we've been talking about expanding your consciousness, and that's one of the things that you have to expand your consciousness about. Is, are you really being called to play a part in the world, or are you doing it out of guilt? Are you really called to take a step out and develop yourself personally, but are you afraid that the world will then forget you and you'll become irrelevant? So, that question leads you into the deepest stratas of truth telling for yourself. And I have to say, it's a hard thing to know on your own. That's why I think going to a coach, going into therapy, I'm starting through spiritual aging at Substack, and you can get there through my book and website. We're starting support groups, spiritual aging study and support groups are coming together spontaneously, because that's one of those things. People can say to you, well, you say you're going to do this, but I don't hear. I hear guilt and this driven quality in you. I'm not really hearing genuine enthusiasm. And
some people will be called to that.
Yes, thank God.
Right, but it's not like it's because that's how you're called, not because you're feeling guilty and you feel like you have to do it.
Yeah, well, like the book, my stepping forward with the book, I kept feeling like I was being called to write again, but it didn't happen until it happened. But meanwhile, I spent 5 years not writing a book and sitting by the riverbank and walking through cemeteries and going for nice dinners. I spent 7 years drawing my dreams every morning and analyzing my dreams. I took a good 7 years out of my life, and it's all in this book. I didn't know it was for any reason or what the reason was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I
A-
was ever going to get a chance to share any of it.
And good for you that you did that. I use a book called Transitions by William Bridges when I
I
coach.
love that book,
Right?
Liminal
Isn't that a great
Space.
book? That's right.
Totally.
You and we don't give ourselves permission to take that
No.
kind of time and that kind of space. We always feel like we have to be busy and be useful, and we forget that being useful can be useful to ourselves by reflecting and being quiet and listening to music and dancing in the rain and whatever it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, good for you that you were able to do that. So talk to me about this title, Spiritual Aging. It's not a religious book, but it
It's
has
not.
spiritual connotations. So what do you mean by spiritual aging?
Well, if I was going to tell you what influenced my spirituality most, I would say it's really eclectic. I'm very much inspired by the mystics, the sages, the gurus from almost every world tradition. But what was really helpful in finding a language where I could talk to people that wasn't overtly religious was the 12-step programs,
Mm,
especially Al-Anon, which is for people who have an addiction. I call it an addiction to relationships, which
mm.
many of us have, that the idea that we can fix our children and, you know,
They don't want us to.
yeah, exactly. So it's my own language, but I'm very influenced by those those people that talk about perennial wisdom, that that place that touches people of all religions and all faiths, where we can share common ground. That, and that's, it gives me hope, because I do believe that if you dig deep enough, well, I'll just go out on a limb and say, I think if you dig way, 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 way deep, what we all share is love. But
Mhm.
we have to go through all kinds of self-love and love of the world. But we have so many defenses. We've just grown up protecting ourselves and defending ourselves and competing, and that's all the stuff that we hopefully don't have to do anymore now that we're old. And I don't know a soul who hasn't done this work and dug down deep enough and found this love that is consistent and essential and eternal, and and is not impacted by the things that happen to us.
Mm.
That's really these old people you see who are glowing. They've
Mhm.
gotten down to that place, and whether they're sick or whether the world's going crazy, whether the kids are screwing up, whether they're
There
living alone, you're living in love. We talked about that earlier. It's like you're not thinking about what your purpose is. You are
Yeah.
immersed in this feeling of you know,
Yeah.
the privilege of age is joy.
And that is so true. I mean, I look at the place where my mom lives, the senior living place, and they're all smiling. They're using walkers and wheelchairs and canes, and they're 90, 100, and they're smiling and they're
Yeah.
enjoying themselves. And she is so full of gratitude for everything. And it's like the little stuff, don't sweat the small stuff. They get
Yeah.
that.
Well, that's beautiful, but it's not that's not universal, because
Mm,
I think what happens as we age is we become more of what we always were.
mm,
So if you're contracting and defending and you never wake up, you just do more and more of the same. You turn into those like cranky, inappropriate, mean-spirited, bitter. I mean, it's completely available to all of us to contract. So the opposite is expansion. And
mm.
your mother sounds like she contains the essence. I don't know how she got to be that way, but it may have been the way she was parented, or her religion, or there must have been some influence on her, but it doesn't come naturally to all of us.
Yeah.
And what I have found is that it is a choice, and you may start contracted and say, I don't want to live this way. I
Yes.
want to live larger, and that's when the work comes. That's when people come to you and read my book or whatever.
Yeah, because you have to, I mean, you're right. I mean, to live miserably is like, what's the point? Why would you don't live that way? There are other choices, and But it does take work. Change is uncomfortable. It's almost better to be stuck in the misery than to risk what the change might be. It's the unknown. Isn't that weird?
Well, I think some people hold on to the misery, ironically, because they're trying to hold on to midlife.
Mm.
They're afraid to go into age,
Oh,
and
well,
the freedom of
yeah,
age.
yeah.
I think aging is much harder than being old. I think
You
aging
do.
I think aging
You
is
call yourself old.
I do.
Yeah, see, I'm not there. Why is
Well,
that easier than aging?
it's how I define aging. For me, people who are aging are on some level still trying to hold on to youth
Hmm.
and to extend midlife. If you don't want to grow old, just don't do it. Just be young
Just
forever.
just getting older,
Yeah,
right?
but unless we're talking about expanding your consciousness, unless you tell the truth to yourself, um, oh my gosh, I'm trying to hold on to something that will not be there forever. I'm going to have to let go at some point, or it's going to be it's going to make me miserable because it can't, it can't sustain. I can't keep putting on just more makeup and getting another Botox treatment. And, I'm already spending 4 hours at the gym. I can't do, I
Right.
cannot, I cannot stave this thing off through my sheer willpower.
Yeah.
And that's what aging is about. And realizing that it's not working anymore is a crisis. And then these happy people you see, like me and your mother, are people that went through the crucible. They let themselves admit that they're gonna die. They just have been willing to look it in the face and say, "Okay, well, what's that poem? I'm going to live my one? How am I going to live my Mary Oliver's poem? I'm going to live my one and precious life.
Yes.
How am I going to live it? My one?
My one precious life.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, it's a great
yeah,
poem. Yeah.
right.
So, when did you get comfortable with just saying, "I'm old"?
Huh. I think I was aging all the way, even though I was writing books about aging, I was still aging myself until COVID.
Ah.
Uh-huh. When I had those years of COVID to really do a lot of introspection, uh, I was walking in the cemetery one day, which is where you walk during COVID, right?
That's right. You
Where there's
got
no people,
nobody there you're gonna infect.
no people. I wasn't there to look at or think about death, but of course, whatever. And as you know, I'm a life stage expert. And I realized I had this like moment of revelation that all life stage theory starts when you're born and ends with when you die. But I heard this voice in me saying, it's not true. Um, our lives start before we're born. We are merged with the universe in love, and and the first half of our life is it's propelling us forward. It's like we have this love, and we know what it is, but we've left it behind. We're having to go through this world kicking and screaming, right? But it's still in the
Mm,
back of our mind.
mm,
And what happened to me during COVID is all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, I not only came from love, but I'm going to go to love. And I
mm,
physically and viscerally felt love reaching out to me from the back of my life and pulling me forward. It just grabbed me in and said, "You're going to be okay." It's going to be okay. COVID will be over one day, and it will. This revelation is going to completely change how you view what life is all about, and what death is, and how it
yeah.
affects all the stages.
I think COVID did that for a lot of us. It slowed us down enough. We were forced to slow down
Yeah.
and take some time with ourselves and try to understand what it is that it meant to us and what our families meant to us and what our place in the world meant to us.
What
And
matters most? And
Yeah.
we detached long enough to not want to get reattached, which is a privilege of age. We don't need to get reattached. Our kids, on the other hand, some of them have disattached prematurely.
Yeah.
It's like, could you please make your career first and then
Right. Right.
and then discover what I've discovered?
Right. You're not old yet, child. So.
No, you need to make a living for your family. And I will say this right now: if you are still supporting your adult child, it's time to let go.
Yes, for sure. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. So before I wind up this show, I want you to describe your book a little bit more. We've been talking about it, spiritual aging,
Right.
weekly reflections for embracing life, but really just explain how this is going to work.
Well, I'm going to show this says Carole's copy. I'll show you a copy that doesn't have Carole's copy on it. But anyway, I love this little book. I hope you'll buy it in paperback because it's so cute to hold, and it's like it's fat. It's short and fat.
It's short and fat.
You just want to hug it. What it is, it's weekly readings. So here's March, and every week has a 1 or 2 page reading, and you are meant to read it once a week, and really not rush ahead. I mean, you can, and in fact, please read it once a week. But if something comes up for you, and you are, gosh, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm struggling today, or whatever. I don't know if you can see that, probably not. But anyway, there's an index in the back that says things like, here's S's: simplicity, solitude, struggling, suffering, triggering, truth-telling, victimhood. So it'll take you to the right reading. So you can do it both ways. In addition to the book, I'm doing a study guide online at spiritual aging at substack.com. Go to my website, Carole Orsborn. That's my name, caroleorsborn.com. And if you sign up at my website, it'll take you there. And thank you so much for posting that. And those are going to be, that's a study guide. So it's spiritual exercises and individual reflection questions, but also for discussion, because both on my website, but also, I don't know if you know the group Saging International.
Yes, I do.
Yes, they're an amazing global organization, and they're doing an immersive year of reflection based on the book. And I'll be teaching for them once a month on a global Zoom session. But this is the first time they've ever done anything like this. They're breaking people up into small 10-person spiritual aging study and support groups with facilitators. So, they've spent 20 or 30 years building this amazing organization with all these people who are trained to lead facilitation groups, and I'm just thrilled they jumped on board with this. So
yeah, that should be really good.
Yeah. So it's this book is really meant. Well, I'm not going to say it's not meant to be. It is. There's a grassroots movement, and I know you feel it too, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
These people are coming together in book clubs and around churches and community centers, senior centers, and now globally online through Zoom and things like that. We're coming together, and we're growing together. We don't have to grow old alone. We don't have to.
You don't want to grow old alone. You need a community. Yeah. So as Carole mentioned, her website is Carole, Carol Orsborn, Orsborn.com. You can find out about her and the newest book and all of her other 35 books from that website. She's very prolific. Before I let you go, also, for the past month, I think some of you are aware that I've been collaborating with other women podcasters so that we can get the word out about the things we are all talking about, different perspectives, different angles that we have on growing older, and ways that we can, take advantage of this stage of our life. And this month I'm partnering with Beverly Glazer. She is the host of Aging with Purpose and Passion, and her podcast shares transformation stories from women over 50, empowering listeners to find renewed purpose, resilience, and joy in midlife and beyond. And Beverly is going to be a guest on my show next week, and we're going to talk about some of this collaboration and rediscovery and passion and purpose and aging and all of that stuff. So I hope you will join us for that. And if you remember at the beginning, I said, when you listen to this, who do you know that is going to be like, oh my gosh, I need to share this with them right now? So do that. This was an important discussion. Share the YouTube link, share the name of the show, Boomer Banter, and tell them to look for the episode with Carole Orsborn wherever they get their podcast. And then please support our sponsor, roadscholar.org/heyboomer, and sign up for one of those. Hopefully you'll win one of those great trips. Carole, thank you. This has been, I know I asked you some really deep questions, so I hope that was okay. We stretched ourselves.
I told you this is my first podcast on this book, so I'm just like, buckle my seatbelt. This is where I'm starting. Holy cow.
It'll all be easy from here on out.
I'm sure.
Thank you for what you're doing, Carole, and for sharing your time with us today.
Well, thank you for what you're doing, Wendy. It's extraordinary, your show, and how you get the word out. You're wonderful.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.